G'day, everyone. Welcome to the Rugby League Coach podcast. We have had a week off, a small hiatus. We missed you. It was due to our friend in the corner here, Lee Addison, going on a trip to Mornington Island. We're also joined by Timmy again. Hey, mate, how you going?
Good, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Now, Lee,
don't bother asking me how I'm going.
I was coming to you next. Lee, I want to know all about your trip. Tell us about Mornington Island and how was it?
Mate, so much rugby league talent there. So much sporting talent. The AFL are all over it. Soccer are all over it. And Lee Addison was all over it. Needless to say, they've not had that much rugby league influence up there. I guess there is one other thing I want to say, that the desire for our game stretches a lot further than we think. And it's a lot stronger than we even think, but we don't look after these people. We simply don't. The kids just love rugby league, and yeah, they don't get to see many NRL games, do they, on their doorstep or anything like that. So, mate, I can't do it justice, really. I could fill a whole podcast with my thoughts in and around it, and I'd probably get quite political as well, and I guess I don't want to turn it into a negative thing or anything like that. But the whole thing had a very big, profound effect on me. I will be talking a little bit more about it on my live, which I'm going to be recording in the morning. But people will get before this, so they can go back and look at the live. I'll be going into a bit more detail on that. But we need to do more as a sport. Is that clear? That's clear.
And it's not just necessarily about missing the talent, is there? It's just about providing the sport we love to those people as well. And I guess, yeah, it's. I'm looking forward to your live, Lee. As you know, I like to tune in on my Wednesday morning drive to work, coffee in hand. It's either that or listen to the Spice Girls, and I'm not afraid to admit the Spice Girls have won a couple of times. But
well, just tell me what you want, what you really, really want, mate.
Oh, you remind me of a bit of a sporty Spice there in your Adidas.
Yeah, okay. Tim Scary Spice.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, before we go into the podcast, who was your favourite Spice Girl? I'll start with you, Tim.
Yeah, probably Scary Spice.
Scary Spice.
Yep.
Okay, Lee.
I'm a mix between Scary and Ginger.
Ginger. Yeah.
But I say mostly Scary. And what's funny as well is a comedian that took her off in England and I gave her a big deep voice like this, and oh, me grapes.
Oh, well, no one asked, but I like Sporty Spice because I was a young bloke at the time. I thought I was sporty, and I just imagined that we'd have the perfect life together. I'm sure she's imagining the same thing as well about me.
I didn't know if Sporty was available to males, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
A boy can only dream.
Who said I was a male? Now, for that, I'll change my identity. But anyway.
That's this podcast just shut down by the Wolf Brigade.
Gone. All right. So, sorry. So, look, we'll get into some rugby league stuff before we get kicked off the airwaves. I want to talk to you guys. Obviously, last round of the NRL has come and gone. We are locked in with our final 8 of the season. I see Lee has doubled down on his opinion that Parramatta are going to win the comp with a strong performance in the last round of the competition. We're going to talk, however, about it more of a low light, being the West Tigers. Now that season 2022 is over, it's really come to light how much of a struggling franchise they are. 42-0 at halftime in their last 80 minutes of the regular season. And it's a little bit of an embarrassment for the boys at Concord, isn't it, Lee?
I firmly believe many of the Tigers players have given up on the season, and I've been very vocal that they have a duty to fans. You know, something's changed with our game along the way. We've gone from being the sport that was played in the community. So I don't know if you saw that film. I forget what it was called. It was about the Newtown Jets, I think.
Yeah, Matty Johns was in it. And
Matty Johns and Nabel, yeah, right?
Yeah.
And the player and the players went into the local pub after training on a Thursday. Now, I'm not saying we need to get back to that, but the point I'm making is they were part of the community. They were answerable to the community. If their head came above the parapet, it'd be knocked off, the old tall poppy. And they were reminded in no uncertain terms how much it meant to play for their team. With the chase for commercialism, I think we've lost that. So, I mean, Gus was on TV a few weeks ago saying that some players will just, because they've nothing to gain from it, they'll just sort of switch off for a little bit, whatever. I mean, there could be some truth in that, to be fair to him. But I do think that a big part is that the players don't realise anymore, or a lot of them don't, that there are people who go and watch the West Tigers and some other clubs that we'll mention, no doubt, and they save up everything they have got just for that game. And rugby league isn't as cheap as it used to be as well. I know I've got family that do that in England when it comes to watching Salford and Wigan and whatnot. The game isn't cheap to watch, and they save up everything they've got, and the way their team performs impacts their moods, impacts their life, impacts their working relationships. It might only impact them a little bit, but it impacts them enough. I know if Man City lose a big game, I'm grumpy for a day or two, not to the point where I'm going to smash anyone or anything, but, if you care, you care. And the performances the Tigers have put in the recent weeks suggest to me they have literally given up. Do you feel the same, Tim?
Yeah, I do. It was absolutely disgusting to watch the game on Sunday. My wife's a big Tigers fan, and we've watched every single game this year, and that has got to be the absolute worst game that I've seen. There was nothing there. There was no attack, no defence. Canberra just basically walked through them. It was a training run for Canberra. And the score would have gone on if Canberra hadn't have switched off. And I reckon they switched off at half time.
Probably because they wanted to rest up a little bit for this week. Taylor, this will surprise you. I've done some statistics.
That doesn't surprise me. You're a well-prepared and well-thought-out young man, Lee. Now, hit us with the stats.
Not normally for the pod. I just roll with the punches. But they've not made the finals for 11 seasons. They were worse this year once they got rid of Madge. So prior to Madge leaving, they'd won 3 games. Since him leaving, they've won 1. And that included their worst loss in history against the Roosters, 72-6. Last week at halftime, they were 1 try away from the record halftime deficit in the NRL. They've conceded 188 points in the last 4 games. They have the worst attack in the competition and the second worst defence. And I reckon they put Noddy in a shoddy position, giving him that job. The management of that club has been nothing short of shocking. I do know a few people there, so I hear a few things. I believe it is toxicity central. Factions working against each other. He said, she said. A couple of old faces have come back in, one in particular, who I know you know, Taylor, and been in both our lives in the past, and he is very power hungry and tells a lot of porkies. He's back. So I won't name anybody, but yeah, it's and they've now put their faith in a man that is in his 70s, and some people struggle to work beyond the 70s. Some people are fine, some people aren't, and this particular person hasn't performed at a high level for the last decade, so since he was in his early 60s. So even that's a risk. That's Tim Sheens I'm talking about. Him and Benji seem to have been missing in action these last few weeks. I think Tim Sheens came out and spoke after the Roosters game when there was quite a few grenades being thrown at them, but Benji doesn't seem to have been very present. It's just been left for Noddy to face the music, and I just think the whole thing the whole thing. I mean, even before Madge left, it was, some players were complaining they didn't like his style and all this. And I think to myself, well, you've got a guy who's coaching you who's won the Premiership on both sides of the world. I think he's only the second coach to win Premierships in England and Australia.
Mm.
I think the other one was Mal Riley. And Mal Riley, there's a couple of caveats in there that, number one, the English Premier system at the time, the first division, was a first past the post. And secondly, when Mal really won the comp in Australia, it was a split competition. He won the ARL one. So there's a bit of caveats there. You could argue that Madge is the one who's only truly done it. Yeah. And not only that, I mean, you could argue, he won it with Wigan, which is quite relatively easy to do because they tend to win 1 in 4 or something like that. But he got South their first victory since, I don't know, Clive Churchill or something. I don't know. So, is he the wrong person, or are the players that aren't responding to the way he is wrong? And it's funny, Craig Bellamy was on 100% footy this week, and he said there's a few things changed. And
I was about to mention that myself.
Yeah. Do you want to mention it, Taylor? Because you've not spoken for a while.
Look, I listened to Craig Bellamy talking 100% footy, and again, he spoke about how, they asked him his plans and will next year be his last. He said, yeah, he's sick of saying it, but he thinks it will be his last. And there's a lot of things in the game that have changed. It's gone right by him. And look, at the first thing, you're right, when you mentioned a 7-year-old Tim Sheen's coming in the job that hadn't done the job for 10 years. If there's been lots of changes, and arguably the best coach in the NRL has admitted there's been lots of changes and things are a little bit different, I wonder how Tim's going to adjust to that.
He was talking about society as well, wasn't he, Bellamy?
It was, but that's when you were talking at the start of that's what I thought. I thought, wow, if Craig Bellamy thinks that's enough's changing within the game.
I'll try and Google what he said to see if the transcript, and
yes,
because he jumped out to me as if he was sort of saying society's changed a bit too much around the game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Well, it'd be good to hear your take on that. Tim, your poor wife, the Tigers fan. If she's anything like my wife, I guess she just blindly supports a side without fully delving too deep into the game itself. Has it been a bit of a rocky year for her?
Yeah, but she's had it over.
That's just because she's married to you.
That's it. Like the Tigers beat Broncos this year, and that was probably one of their best games that they've played all year. And it's been really, really hard for her to watch them, and like she'll watch them even when they get absolutely pumped. A lot of people they turn off, but no, she watches from start to finish all the way through. She is quite passionate about it, but she sees a few little things, but mainly concentrates on certain players that she likes.
Yes, the good-looking ones, I can imagine.
Yeah.
The good-looking ones. But have you
lift your game, Cheeseman?
Have you bought her a Dolphins jersey for Christmas or not?
No, not yet.
Okay, well, just an
idea. Who do you support, Timbo?
The Onkos, mate. But I'll be supporting the Dolphins next year onwards because that's my dad. He grew up in Redcliffe and played footy up there.
Oh yeah, place to be.
I've actually got the clip. There's no transcript. I've got the clip. So
yes,
I'll try and find that while we're talking.
Okay, no worries.
I'll try and have 2 earphones going.
So you are confirmed Dolphin supporter next year, Tim?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. That's exactly. Yes, confirmed Dolphin in 2023. Tim Cheeseman.
Not the only club is changing next year.
Announced by Wayne Bennett today. Tim's joined the club in 2023. Oh, very good. I guess on the path and the paddock that we're in, talking about clubs that are struggling a little bit as Lee looks for that clip from Craig Bellamy. There's been another club in the headlines, certainly over the last 24 to 48 hours. The Dolphins have been a name that's been thrown in the mix with them. Some stars bluing, some in-house dramas, I guess all stemming from a jersey debacle a couple of weeks ago. The Manly Sea Eagles, Tim, they can't keep themselves out of the news at the moment, can they?
No, they can't. And it's a shame because they have some quality players in that team. This year, they've been absolutely smashed by injury. But the fact that there's so much turmoil going on there, I think it was yesterday morning, DCE and Tommy Turbo, they came out and had a press conference together. But there was reports that Tommy Turbo, Jake, they were all going in to see what was going on. They'd made an appointment to see the hierarchy and actually find out what is going on. There is people saying that there's people against Desi, there's people for Desi, there's people going for Bob Fulton and his side of things,
He's
how
dead.
the club should be run. And
Bob
that sort of
Fulton's
stuff.
gone.
Yeah, but he's
The family's son, Scott Fulton.
yeah, they're following along with them, and it's taken so much of the game away. All of this, and I'd say a lot of it is garbage and hearsay. It's just taking away from the game too much, I think.
You got to remember, I used to be at Manly, so I know a few things. Where I've got the clip.
Next.
Should I play it on the microphone?
Play it on the microphone. Play the clip about Craig, and then we'll move back to your Manly.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
But yeah, I pretty much say next year's going to be only last year. It's I'm a bit too old for this, and the game has changed in a lot of ways that I'm probably not so used to or not that fond of. I suppose a little bit old school in some ways, but as I said, things have changed. But, things have changed in life too. So, obviously with sport and any sort of sport or any game, they sort of follow along with what's happening in society. And so I think by in the next year I would have had enough.
How many hours of sleep you average a night, Craig?
I think there's a strong societal part in that, the way he's talking, because the game's change. I don't know about you, Taylor. I think you agree. Rugby league is a metaphor for life. So sometimes you actually do mix the two up. He said that the game's changed in a way he doesn't like. I think that will be, he says I'm a bit old school in some ways. That will be things like raising your voice to a player or doing some kind of fitness activity and saying no water or you've got to bring water or whatever it may be. Or, there's countless examples. There's countless examples of things like this. Somebody's got an injury and you might be litigiously forced to rest them. I have no doubt that there is some people of a certain vintage who don't believe that you should be stood down for so long with head knocks and whatnot. So Gus Gould said something again as well, which, it's probably in the dinosaur realm. But then he did talk about life and the way life's changed as well. And it will be things like he probably, I'm just guessing here, but he probably doesn't like the influence that social media and phones have on things. And probably doesn't like, what else can I think of? Maybe, dare I say it, just some of the social activities of some of the players now. I actually found it refreshing that he said that, though, that he recognises he's getting a bit too old for it.
Yeah. No, certainly it's very self-aware. And I guess just to say, and even at the end, he said, well, that's just life. Life changes. And, it's just, I'm out. So it goes to show, all things do change, and Craig's obviously very receptive of that, and he's made a decision best for himself and his loved ones, and he's out. So, that's Craig, and it's a good point, Lee. The societal changes, I actually didn't pick up on that note when I heard it the first time, so it's good to hear that take on it. Now, the Sea Eagles, I was talking with Tim. We were talking about the dramas there, the meetings, the Trebojevic brothers. I know a lot of good people that have seen them sign a contract in the Redcliffe Leagues Club on the back of a bar coaster. May have been in 2018 before the NRL team was announced, but it still happened one night in the Leagues Club.
Yeah.
So, Lee, what can you tell us about Manly, and what are your thoughts on I guess the issues within that club?
Well, it's been a rudderless ship for a while. There's not been a CEO for a while. And mate of mine, Tony Mestroff, is now the boss, or the CEO. Depends who the boss is. He's got a mandate for change from the club. That's public knowledge. But Manly have a habit of churning through CEOs. I think it's something like 6 in 8 years.
Yep.
And that's because historically there's been some very powerful figures at Manly. So the Fulton, the late Bozo Fulton, Bob Fulton, was a very powerful figure. I know from my time when I was at Manly, he was still a big mentor for Des. So if you think about the lineage, basically a premiership hasn't been won at Manly without Bozo or Des Hasler as coach. So, and Des played for Bozo. So there was a strong tie there. You've had the owners change in the last decade from the Del Meeges to the Pens. I might be wrong with this. I'm not sure. And again, I'll have to Google it. I don't think they've won a premiership under the Pens. I think they only won it under the Del Meeges, I think. So, are you Googling Scott Penn there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you do that. It's about time you did some research for this pod. So, and that's not me. That's not me criticising Scott Penn. I'm just saying that that's the fact. So, and I think that, or could be a fact, sorry, might not be a fact. Manly is one of those clubs where you have to be a Manly person. Tony Mestroff is a Manly person. He's lived on the northern beaches most of his life. He played there, etc., etc. So he's a good fit in that sense. There's other issues. Ray Hadley brought to the fore this week that DCE got his own house during the lockdown phase, the relocation phase, when they were up in Brisbane.
Right.
So he got afforded his own property to stay in, which I believe he paid for himself. I know DCE personally, not like bestie, not great mates or anything, but we're enough to say hello to each other. He's a lovely guy, very much misinterpreted a lot, I think. I've got mutual friends. I will say this, though, I did sort of think that this stunk a little bit, even though he did pay for it. It's not his fault. I'm not going to go at him. But the idea of a captain having his own place while everyone else slugs it out, I mean, that's sort of like the old English cricket, what the old English cricket team used to do. They used to give the captain his own training, his own dressing room, while the rest did it in squalor, Yeah. So that didn't sound about right. I believe the postseason celebrations, half the team didn't turn up, which smacks of a fractured club or a fractured team. And obviously everyone's linking it with this Pride jersey thing. Did you manage to find your...
Yeah, so the Pens have owned 40% of Manly since 2004, but only took over completely in 2015.
Yep, so they've not won a premiership under the Pens.
No.
So Manly's last premiership was 2011. So Des, we've discussed this on this pod before, Taylor Llewellyn, that Des is probably one of the last all-powerful coaches.
Yes.
Des does like to have power. So there's a story going around that he shut the door on Scott Penn, the owner, in the dressing room. Didn't let him in the dressing room. So Des is obviously a control freak, or somebody who wants control. He's always been very secretive and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. He has a paranoia about him. A quote attributed to Gus Gould that you've got to be paranoid to be successful, or only if you want to win, be paranoid or something like that. So, Craig Bellamy's quite secretive too, by the way, about their prep. But Des obviously hasn't got the connect with people around him like Craig Bellamy has in Melbourne. And what's happened at Melbourne is that the same people have basically been involved. The Paul Bunn, recruitment manager, and Frank Panisi, the football manager, and then the CEOs may have changed over time, but at least they've stayed there for a few years. But Manly have had a revolving door of CEOs. The Fulton sort of got a bit more control over the club a few years ago, and that was a bit more in terms of stability there. And I guess that that has allowed somebody like Des to come in and fill the vacuum. I just feel like my mic's dropping in and out a little bit, Taylor. Can you still hear me, though, when it drops out?
We can. It just goes very soft and then brings back up to full strength.
Yeah.
So we can still hear you.
That's all right. I think sometimes when we're doing Zoom with more than one person, depending on who's on the line, it drops for some reason. So I'll just blame you, Tim.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm happy for you to blame Tim.
Yeah.
Jury.
I've got a very responsible
Guilty.
position. Anytime anything goes wrong, I'm responsible.
Maybe just try this and see if it helps. If you can, because you're on a phone, Tim, can you just, when you're not talking, just mute yours? That might help, because I think it's, Is that all right? Just try that. Because there is a correlation. When there's more than one, that tends to, when the mic drops for some reason. It's not cheap or anything. It's a bloody decent mic. So, yeah.
The control of the team by Des, I guess that's, as we've mentioned, he's one of the last true controllers of everything that happens in and outside of Manly, possibly causing to issues there. Do you see anyone walking out on the club in this off-season?
Well,
do you see that happening?
As you've noticed, I've not actually criticised anybody. I've just sort of explained where I think it lies. What I do think is there's some ego involved, particularly probably on Desi's part, to be fair. But you've got to look at it from Desi's point of view and think to yourself, well, he has won a couple of premierships. Him and Bozo are the only two that have won them for the club. Manly is Des is Manly. I also guess he's been used to having that power before, so it's very hard to relinquish that when you have had it, So I believe there's a meeting the day this podcast comes out, actually. So this podcast might age quite quickly because it all depends how that goes. Look, I'll
ask this question. Is there more chance of Des leaving or some of the players leaving?
The problem with the players is that because of the salary cap and everything, it can be so hard to move them on sometimes. So the answer to that is Des. But Des ain't going to go unless he gets a massive payout. I think basically this kind of approach where the management took a few things off him and off his hands, that happened at the Bulldogs. So he just coached. He just stayed and coached. He just held his ground, and they had to pay him. So, Des is the kind of bloke, he has the same shoes he had when he played, still wears them every day, like he still has the first quid he earned, I think. So,
yeah.
Look, I just think the club has managed to turn a half-decent season into a basket case in a matter of weeks. The concern for me is the fracture in the playing group. The other concern is how many injuries they get, and you've got to look at. I'm afraid you've got to look at the performance staff and the way they're training and the way they're getting rehabbed and whatnot. So,
yeah, it's been a high number of injuries, certainly, especially to their well-known players. Obviously, under a lot of stress, your Trebojeviches and like such. Well, we're going to move on to a bit more of an exciting topic. We're going to move on to the NRL Finals. I want to talk to you lads and get your opinions. By the way, Tim, the experiment with Lee failed. His microphone was also soft during that time. So
don't worry about muting yourself, Tim.
So take your nose.
Bet your wife wished you had that button now.
Take your nose out of the corner and rejoin the class. Now, the NRL Finals have come about. Tim, your side is not in the finals, the Broncos, which was spectacular that we even say they're not in the finals of one of the best final few games capitulations that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yes, likewise.
So your Broncos aren't there. My Dragons aren't there, but I'll take a moral victory as we beat your Broncos in the last round of the season. And Lee, I believe you are not inclined to go for an NRL team in particular. But actually, who was your first club that you followed? I guess Manly, because that's who you're first employed by here.
No. Back in England, I had a thing for the Roosters.
Did you? Well, then your team is still alive and kicking if you want to go back to your
team. It's not my team.
Your deep-seated English roots.
Let me tell you about the Roosters. So I love the kit colour, and I love they played in a big city. I love they were a Sydney City
And did you love Adrian Morley?
And then Mozza came over. Yeah. So that just, it was just natural that I followed them. And then I got here and lived here, and then I realised that the junior area wasn't that strong, and there was a bit of... the club almost seems like it's the only thing in that area for rugby league in a way, if that makes sense. So
yes.
And I mean that with all due respect to the people who operate in that area, like Bondi United and all that. But when I got over here and noticed that we're getting most of their players from outside the area or whatnot, I just sort of fell away from them a little bit.
You fell out of love.
I don't know if I ever was in love. And then I came over to Manly, and then Penrith, and I can promise you after those two, my favourite was Manly. Yeah. So I just ended up getting to a point where I knew that many people in the game and everything. I thought, you know what? I've got mates here and there. I've got people that I dislike here and there, and it's all sort of equal, so I'll just roll with the punches. And over the years, I've had soft spot for Souths because of our mate Craig Bissell and JK. I've had the odd soft spot for St. George because I'm a massive Wayne Bennett fan. So when he was the coach there, I wanted him to do well. And then recently, this year in particular, I've lost a couple of mates who are Para fans. So Para's been the team and Gutho's there. So so part of that, I watch Para games this next couple of weeks. I'll definitely be looking at Para, put it that way.
Right. So that's the longest explanation of who you went for as a kid in your original team that I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, well, it's not a one-word answer, is it?
I feel like, what's that answer of Billy Madison? At no stage in that rambling, incoherent piece was anything said of any substance.
I should start in politics.
You'd be great. You could run for both parties. Anyway, so Tim, have you got a team for the final series?
I'm going to go for Souths.
What? To support them all to win it.
To win it.
Oh, no. No. Why?
Why? I just think that the style of play that they're doing at the moment, I think that they can beat any of them. But yet any of the top 8 can win.
I don't disagree with that. I
don't think the Raiders can win. I know we've got a mutual friend at the Raiders there, Lee, but sorry, Adam.
Oh, they can beat Melbourne this week, though.
I think they can beat Melbourne this week. I just don't think they have the ability to win the competition, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of the other 7 do.
I think the top 4 are clearly better than 3 of the next 4, apart from the Roosters. But I think the Roosters might be a bit bashed. So I think they'll win this week, but fall short. I think they're going to run out of juice.
This is my concern with the Roosters. Depending on who they come up against in the finals, would they be bashed and etc. So let's have a... Oh, sorry. Oh, geez, I just had a big yawn.
It's funny when people go...
So we look at the final series with the draw coming up.
He is predicting. Look, he's been preparing the lad.
I think I'm with you, Lee. Unfortunately, I've had a bet on the Roosters a couple. I'm going to say 6-7 weeks ago now. I put a bet on the Roosters. I think they make the grand final. I just think they fall short on the big stage. I'm still going to be rooting for them. I hope they win the grand final, but I do think they fall short. I don't know who that's to. I don't know where that is, but I think they fall short.
I always get mixed up. after the second round of semis, like which side of the draw that I always get.
They flip. They flip sides all of a sudden. Do we all see the Raiders as the only team that can't win the competition from here?
Yeah, and his mob South. I don't think South can win it.
You don't think South can win the comp?
No, they've not been a convincing team to me. Even when they've played well, they've not been a convincing team in the sense that they've not put it together for long enough this year. That said, I'm really proud of the job that Jason Dimitriou's done because I'm a Jason Dimitriou fan as a coach. Me, I like my coaches who have apprenticeships. So, and it looked like it was going to be a tricky season for them. But, I mean, we've got to hold some sway on the ladder, boys. I mean, 7 and 8 just aren't going to win the comp this year, surely. Melbourne aren't. And Roosters have probably left it a bit too late, and they're probably a bit battered. That Joey Manu, or whatever he's called, getting injured was a bad thing.
Yes, that's why I don't think that they'll go. They'll either get knocked out this week or the following week.
Speaking of getting knocked out, Rabbitohs won't do much without Cameron Murray.
No.
And the poor lad gets knocked out every time he stands up out of bed.
Yeah, he does,
If Cameron Murray is someone that I'd nominate just from a welfare point of view and say, maybe have at least 2 weeks off and consider the season. And I'd also recommend he doesn't look at Lee's head when he has that tape around it.
I'm ready to go. I just found this in my drawer. I think I put it over my ears.
Looks some sort of... Is that a garter?
I don't know what it is. I'm not got a clue.
A black garter.
It's not ladies' underwear or anything. It's not even male underwear. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, you know what a garter is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it looks like a black garter.
Well, it's definitely not one of them. I was looking for one of these glasses case because I just want to clean my glasses.
Oh,
and I got a bit more than a bargain for.
Yeah. So, do you see this game on the weekend out at Penrith Stadium, Lee? Is that your grand final rehearsal? They play each other in week one, meaning if the loser will go flip to the other side of the draw.
The Penrith in the last third of the season have dropped a couple of games, haven't they?
Mm.
Origin seems to have knocked them about a little bit. Some of the is it the two halves haven't played for 6 weeks or something?
Yeah,
that's right.
That's it.
I actually don't see that as a bad thing.
Well, this is always the test, isn't it? Rest or keep playing.
Yeah, well, there's a good argument that you give them a rest, and I agree with that argument. But if they weren't suspended, you might give them a week off here. They might have 2 weeks off. Maybe Cleary has 2, Luai has 1 at a certain point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've obviously been forced to have long layoffs. Luai through injury, Cleary through suspension.
Yeah.
Luai is a little more troubling for me because it is an injury, so he has to deal with the rehab of that on the way back through. Cleary, however, probably had a week, 2 weeks off. Maybe had some really hard training for 3 weeks, then maybe had another week lighter.
But you can't duplicate a game.
You can't, but you're doing full contact at training.
Yeah.
You're doing, I don't think can you say would he have missed a beat? Probably not. Maybe a little bit. Maybe the first 5 minutes he's a little bit, getting back into the switch of things. You're talking about one of the best players in the world.
And he's played a lot. I mean, him and Cleary grew up playing with each other.
He's played lots of big games, and you're also talking about a young lad that's probably played or been around football since he's 4 years old.
Yeah.
Now, taking 6 weeks off is not going to give you the inability to play the game anymore.
No.
Is it going to impact a few things? Well, it depends how much work he's done on his football in between, and knowing probably the professionalism that Nathan Cleary would have, you probably wouldn't have found him much in that 6 weeks without a football in hand.
Well, I'm going to go through the form line, the Penrith form line. Penrith got pumped last week, but they did put out a weakened side. They rested a lot of their players.
Rested 13 players.
They pumped the Warriors the week before. So, cross, tick. Please keep talking. Sorry.
Oh, you were doing,
doing my research. They beat the Bunnies.
Yes.
Tim's Bunnies that are going to win the comp. They beat them. But they got beat by the Storm.
Mm.
They beat Canberra and they got flogged by the Eels. So the last 6 games, they've 50%. I don't think that's title-winning football, is it?
Probably not. You're right. Probably not. But I still like...
And they did have the minor premiership in the bag for much of that as a caveat. But
so
how much does momentum matter?
So do you think Penrith are a real chance of going back-to-back?
Me or Tim?
You?
Yeah, I do. I just don't think it's a fait accompli.
No,
you remember last year?
No. I'm not saying back-to-back premierships. I'm saying back-to-back losses
out
and
the door.
bundled out the back door.
No, I can't see that happening. I think they're going to win a finals game because I think they're mentally strong. But I just don't think it's a fait accompli. They're going to win it. And you got to remember last year, they only just beat Parramatta.
Mm.
I think it was in Mackay or in...
Yeah.
Central Queensland from memory. The game we're done for Queensland League scene this week. The venue there.
Brown Park.
Brown Park. Yeah, I've been there. So yeah, I think they've got it all to do. I'm not ruling them out. And the smart money says Penrith, but I think like I said, I've said it all year. I think Para were timing the run, and there's a few weeks ago where they really tested that theory for me. But I've lent towards that because they've had enough in them all year to beat anybody.
Mm.
Like if you remember early in the season, they beat Penrith or Melbourne or something, and lost the week after to
probably the Tigers.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't have won again. But yeah, it's just somebody rubbish,
So, how good has Sean Lane been?
He's such a good player.
He's a really good player, and it feels like he's just come into his own in the past, 3 months.
Watching at Suncorp last year, I was able to tell who the top 2 or 3 sides were just because of the seats I had at Suncorp. This year, I've only been a couple of times. I've been on the other side of the ground, but in the middle again, in a real good spot. And I watched Para the other week, and they were scintillating for big chunks of it. They were really good. Really good. And you know how much of a critic I am on Queensland League scene, the tactics and movement off the ball and ball movement and everything else. I couldn't pick holes in them.
Yeah, that good.
Yeah.
That good. All right, so you're sticking to your form. You're putting $100 on the Parramatta Seals. Happy with it? I
put a bet on them. I did put a bet on them.
Oh, there you go. I was talking about a metaphorical $100, but
no, I did it. I did it at Ned's.
There you go.
Yeah, I did it about 8 weeks ago, something like that.
That's a plug. There you go, Ned's. So the Cheese has got money on the Bunnies. I've got money on the Roosters. Lee's got money on the Seals.
So you think the Chucks?
Oh, if they don't win the comp, they'll lose in the grand final. I think they'll be thereabouts. Mate, I've said it 100 times. I don't think the Eels win the comp.
No.
I don't. And
I'm the same.
I just think that something about them, I don't know, this may sound very pedestrian from me, but I don't believe they have it in them to win the comp. I think they just have a few players in and around there that haven't played too many big games, and when they have played big games, they haven't performed that well.
Penrith Para, who wins this week?
I think Para win this week.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm going Para.
Okay.
I think Para win this week.
Okay, so I'm going to draw this out.
Draw it out. Originally I had a bet for the Penrith to meet the Roosters in the grand final. That was my little thought in my head. I don't know how the draw comes out.
Storm, Canberra.
Storm.
Oh, Storm.
So Storm. So Canberra out. Does that mean Penrith play Storm the week after?
So I'm just looking at Penrith play Storm. Yes.
Right, you do that bit, and I'll.
Penrith play Storm next week. Sharks or Cowboys? Who's going to win there?
Sharks.
Yeah,
I'm
with
going to
you.
go Cowboys.
I think Sharks too, mate. And
Sharks
I think
win that one.
And I think the Roosters win that one.
So that means the Cowboys stay in.
Yeah.
So Roosters beat Souths. So then it's Cowboys v Roosters. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So Penrith Panthers versus Storm, week 2.
Panthers beat the Storm.
Yep.
Panthers beat the Storm. So that puts Penrith on the other side of the draw.
Yes.
Okay. Cowboys, Roosters.
Roosters.
Cows.
Roosters.
Cows. I reckon the Cowboys are going to show a few teams up.
I'm going Cowboys. So that puts Cowboys through. So that'll be Para versus Cowboys.
Yeah.
That'll be a cracker.
That'll be a great game.
And then who's the other one? Penrith versus who? Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, 2 great semis. Who wins out of Para and Cowboys?
The Roosters from the week before.
No, they're out because we're putting the
They're
three
not
on
out.
voting.
They're not out. This is
They're
my
out.
this is my piece of paper.
Para or Cowboys, Llewellyn?
Oh, Para win that.
Cowboys. Cowboys.
I go Para. That's what I mean. Para can win this comp.
Hang on, Tim started this podcast saying the Rabbitohs are going to win the comp. Now he's that far on the bloody Cowboys.
Well, you guys have already taken South, so
Yeah.
yeah. So if they can't, if you guys reckon that they can't,
So you reckon?
Okay.
So you reckon if the Rabbitohs won that first game, they would have beaten everyone, even the Cowboys.
yep, I reckon they could.
No.
You remind me.
Penrith Panthers or Sharks?
He's bloody Paul Kent over here. He's just saying anything to go against us. That's what he's doing.
One of my followers on social media questioned me when I said this as well. I knew the Sharks could end up on that side of the draw. Sorry, yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Penrith versus Sharks, who wins?
I reckon Sharks.
I think Penrith. Who gave you the deciding vote?
You two, because you said something different each time.
So what do you want?
I think Penrith.
Yeah, I think Penrith too.
You know my only drama though, if Penrith get there, I don't think Para will beat them twice this season.
That's what I think too. I don't think Para win the comp, mate. I don't see a pathway Para win the comp in my eyes. I am happy to eat my words. In fact, if
there is a pathway.
There's a pathway, but if Para win the comp, I'm happy to write those words back down on a piece of paper and physically eat those words on the podcast. No questions, if maybes or buts. But I just don't believe in my little heart of hearts.
Who wins the final, Para or Penrith, Tim?
Penrith.
Yeah.
There
But
you go.
I don't. That's out of those two, but I don't think Para. You take out their front row, and they've got no go forward. They've got Sean Lane out one side.
Papali'i goes all right.
Yeah,
But
but
most teams front row, you've got no go forward.
you've got guys that coming off the bench. Para they drop a little bit when their bench comes on, and I think the better teams are just going to keep going straight through the middle, getting those big boys moving that ball around, wearing them out.
Yeah, I quite like their bench, to be honest. I mean,
I do, yeah. I don't have.
Makatoa's been playing some good football, but he's, you're relatively in his infancy in his game. But I like how mobile their pack is on the bench.
And I'm not 100% sure that the drop in performance is to do with the bench. I think it's in the second half of the second half. And I think in the last couple of weeks, they dropped off with about 30 to go against Brisbane. Last week, they dropped off with about 15 to go. Both times they had the game in the bag. The way they're playing right now reminds me of how Souths played towards the end of last year.
Well, look, I'm not too opposed to what you are saying, though, there, Tim, in the fact that if they lose one or two through injury, they don't have... Well, they have Nathan Brown still missing out on a jersey, Bryce Cartwright off a Hickey Ogden, but they're not, they don't have much. I think Roosters have a really good squad. They have a really good squad. I like their bench players.
Lodge's made a huge difference.
Matt Lodge has been one of the best buys of this season, mate, and he's only done it in the last couple of months. And I guess it's funny, I had a conversation with Matt Lodge before he went down to Sydney, and we were talking down there at the Redcliffe Dolphins Football Club, actually. We were both the coaches of our
Got to
son.
mention him every day, haven't you?
I don't. He was the coach of his son's under-sixes side, and I was the coach of my son's under-sixes side. And so we saw each other every Friday, and we played together previously. And when he was moving down there, he said, we were talking, he said, I'm going to bide my time, and when I go down there, it's going to be the right club because I want to play finals football, and I want to. And he said, I think one of the reasons why I haven't been picked up for representative honours and all those things is because I've never really been in a club that's heavily featured in those final series, and I think it's going to bring the best out of me. And look at him now; he's playing some outstanding football. They've got Takiaho on the bench. Lindsay Collins was on the bench before he got suspended. Lodge playing over them and not looking out of place at all. So I'm really happy for Matt Lodge. He's
me too, and I also think Teddy's playing some of his best football too. I think he's responded really well to the whole. A year ago, everyone was saying, "Oh, Turbo was the best fullback in the world."
No.
So I think Teddy's come up with the best response. Added so many things to his game, and looking the goods.
I'm worried. My only worry with the Roosters is how much Manu's injury is actually going to take on the whole team. Now they've had some big games. Like the last probably 2-3 games, they have been really giving it to teams. And I think the X factor of Manu, with them not being there, Tedesco, he'll play his normal game, but I think he might even up a little bit more, and it might take some of his impact away.
Maybe.
Yeah, I just think that Manu has a week, 2 weeks off. You know, he comes back at the right time if they're in a grand final qualifier. I think Lindsay Collins comes back for that grand final qualifier. So they get a little bit of respite in the middle, a little bit of respite outside. You know, they've still got Drew Hutchinson's a really good utility player to bang anywhere. They've got a strong bench with Watson, another great utility. You know, Egan Butcher. Yeah. So I don't know.
Who fills Manu's position this week?
Well, they've got Momorowski. He's won a comp.
Yeah.
He's won a comp.
Yeah.
He's won a comp.
When that kind of thing happens, you got to look at not what they. Yes, they're going to lose. It's what they lose rather than what they gain. So, like, let's say me or Taylor are being chosen at prop. You know, with me, there's at least 5 line busts, a couple of big hits. You know, I'm going to set up a couple of tries, probably score 2. Taylor takes my place when I'm injured. Steady hit-ups, decent play of the ball. Sometimes he gets knocked on his ass. You know what I mean? But he's still doing his defensive job. Do you know what I mean? So you don't lose, but you don't gain as much.
I'm going to go ahead and say that you and I, head-to-head, would have a very fierce and aggressive physical battle. But then as soon as I sucked you into a few and you're just a headhunting, I've just got a tip on that I don't think you ever would have possessed. I think I've got hands that you would have dreamed to have. And I think I had vision that you only developed once you were a coach of the game. So there you go.
The best thing is I developed those hands in him. But the other thing is, you know why I didn't have a tip on? I just had a 3-man cut out pass, mate.
I feel like that was the moment where Luke, I am your father. That was the moment.
Who's your daddy?
I developed those skills. Yeah, you developed those skills, but you know, I think you've just got the roles reversed about who starts and who's on the bench. I think that's all that's happened there, and that's fine. It's been a long podcast. You might be a bit weary, a bit tired. You're not thinking properly. But if you're being genuine about this, Lee, and you're a coach and you're coaching Lee Addison and Taylor Brown. And you've got someone that you just can't replace in the middle of us. You're going, well, look, lads, I think you're going to spend some time on the chrome, Lee. I think that's what happens.
To be fair, if I was coach of me and you, I would start with me, suck in the defenders and blah, blah, blah. You know, a bit slower in the legs. You always came off the bench, mate, for me, remember? Always.
I do remember.
Never started.
I hated you.
Never started.
No, I never started.
Did you start for Redcliffe?
Yeah, a couple of times I'd start.
But mostly off the bench.
Both at lock and front row.
Lock?
But yeah, I started the game at lock, yeah. A couple of games at lock. Mate, this is one...
The evolution of the lock.
Mate, this is one season when I got down to 99 kegs.
Jeez.
And I was looking good. That game at lock was my best game I ever played for Redcliffe, I think, against the Tweedhead Seagulls.
Was that Redcliffe 3rd grade?
It was a Channel 9 game in the Host Plus Cup, thanks, Lee. And it was
the Host Plus Cup, Lee.
It was on Easter. My family had flown up to watch.
No wonder.
And it was good. It was one of the best games. Actually, the opposing
they
front
wanted
row,
to rub their eyes and see if it was real.
The opposing front row was Lalani Latu, actually, for Tweedhead.
Oh, from Blacktown.
Yeah.
Good lad, him.
Bit of trivia. He's great lad. Well, we grew up in the same area, me and Lalani, so...
Yeah, sweet.
He's a really good guy. Anyway, guys, you've all been great. And as much as I love talking about how I'm probably a far more superior player than Lee, let's wrap this up. I think we've given the fans what they really wanted.
I just love how Tim's beard has virtually grown out again. He only shaved it 2 weeks ago to like nearly the bone.
I feel like I've watched it grow as this podcast has progressed.
But his hair hasn't grown.
That's how I
beard. I do my beard once a week now.
that's how I knew how to wrap it up, because he's got his 5 o'clock went to a 6 o'clock.
I'm just glad he's not vaping today. Or drinking a can of Mother.
Oh, go away.
Is he drinking Mother?
No. He's a water, some sort of health kick.
H2O.
Yep, I'm down to 103. The lightest I've been for, I don't know, about 10 years or so.
Have you got diarrhea?
No.
Okay. What have you been doing?
Just really watching what I'm eating. And
running from the cops in Redlands, I reckon.
Oh, mate, if I was allowed to run, I would. My knees don't take good to running on the road. On the grass, it's not too bad for a little bit, but yeah.
103, eh?
Yep.
103. Well, one day we'll be talking about the 103rd episode of the Rugby League Coach Podcast. And we'll remember this time where Tim was talking about how he's 103.
Look at Taylor tonight. He looks immaculate, doesn't he? Like his hair looks neat. His teeth are white.
At least he's got hair.
See this tooth here? This is my most hated tooth. So
you've got that tooth and Tim's got one missing. Look at that.
See how it's darker than all the others?
Yeah.
So when I was 12 years old, it got hit playing footy. And it died. So I had to get root canal, and he injected it with white stuff, and it matched all my other teeth. But then as I've gotten older, the whites faded away. And I went to a dentist before I got married, and I was like, mate, I hate this tooth. Like, what can we do here? He's like, mate, unless you want to replace all your bloody teeth to match, he goes, there's not much we can do. Suck it up.
Denture just love it.
Yeah. Oh. All right, I am officially done. I'm done. I can't
See
do
you,
that
boys.
anymore.
See you, boys.
See you.